Hey y'all, howdy, welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandra Broadwell, and today we're going to talk about the Goodreads Choice Awards. I'm sure you've not seen any content about this so far, right? I know a lot of people hate Goodreads Choice Awards content, but I live for it. It's some of my favorite content of the entire year. So let's talk today about the science fiction category. There are complaints every year about how weak the science fiction category is if you are a sci-fi reader, and I am a sci-fi reader. The general complaint is just that there are a lot of just literary books that have a little bit of a sci-fi element in them that are shoved into this category, when in reality, when the general populace thinks of science fiction, they think of things like The Expanse or Star Wars or, like space opera-y type things. And there's very little of that actually exists in the sci-fi category on Goodreads, which is always a bit of a disappointment for a sci-fi reader like myself. Not that these other things are not sci-fi, but as far as like the meat of the genre is not showing up in the awards. So let's go to the science fiction Goodreads list for this year, the top 20, and let's just see what they've got. And then we'll talk about what my plan is for this video. So as you can see, I've already voted because I've only read one book in the sci-fi category for Goodreads this year, which is not too surprising because I read a lot more backlist stuff than new releases. And also, The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey is one of the best books that I have read out of the 77 books that I've read so far this year. So that would probably get my vote regardless of if I read the rest of the books in this category or not. But let's look at the rest of these. We have Yours for the Taking, which I've never heard of, Orbital by Samantha Harvey. I only heard of because I think it just won some sort of award, but I also heard from other people that it wasn't very good. I Cheerfully Refuse, I've never heard of. I'm starting to worry about this Black Box of Doom by Jason Pargin. I don't know what that is, but the title just sounds like a goofy, fun time. So I added it to my want to read list. And then there are a few other books on this list that I had throughout the year added to my want to read list on Goodreads for various reasons. So we have The Stardust Grail by Yumi Katase. That one I think is supposed to be kind of spacey, found family, and some sort of heist, perhaps. So that all sounds really fun. And I know that this author had their debut novel, The Deep Sky, was on the Goodreads Choice Awards last year. And I didn't think the plot of The Deep Sky sounded that interesting to me, but this one does. So I had added it to my want to read list. And then Absolution by Jeff Vandermeer is like book 4, I think. What does it say? Yeah. It's the 4th book in the Southern Reach quartet, I suppose, and I have not read any books by Jeff Vandermeer. I very much believe that I will probably read the entire Southern Reach series at some point in the future, but I'm not going to be tackling that in this video. Annie-Bot by Sierra Greer. I've heard great things about this year, and it's about a sex bot, and it's from her perspective, so I think that sounds really intriguing. Moon of the Turning Leaves by Wabishig Rice. They are a Native American author, and it is the sequel to a post-apocalyptic novel called Moon of the Crusted Snow. And I thought that book sounded really good, and I've heard really good reviews about it. So I imagine I will read Moon of the Turning Leaves at some point in the future, but because I haven't read the first book, that's not going on this video. Red Side Story I've never heard of, and Ascension I've never heard of. Beautyland I heard of, but only because it was on several New York Times book lists throughout the year, but I didn't actually hear any readers talking about it on BookTube. So that's a little bit interesting. This one, again, I think is one of those that's more literary with a sci-fi lean, but it's about a woman who thinks she's an alien or something like that. Unclear. I'm not 100% sure what the plot of this one is. And then we have Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. Fantastic book. I'll link to the video down below where I reviewed that, but I will definitely be reading the rest of this series, and I can't wait for the next one. And then The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley, I think is what that says. This is the book that I've probably seen the most people having read this year, as far as seeing reviews around the internet. And this is about a time travel agency, which has been kind of hot lately. That was like the plot of the show Loki as well. But I think it's kind of like a historical romance aspect to it as well. And I've heard pretty mixed reviews about it. Some people really like it and some people don't like it at all, but I'm intrigued by it at least. Service Model by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I read Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky earlier this year. Service Model, I think, is kind of his take on like a murder bot type book, and that didn't, I don't know, it just didn't sound that appealing to me. The Other Valley, no interest in. I have no idea what that is. Baby X, I have no idea what that is. Sky Full of Elephants, don't know. The Blueprint, Extinction, The Family Experiment. I don't really know anything about the rest of the books on the list. So that's it. But I did have The Ministry of Time, Beautyland, Annie Bot, and the Stardust Grail on my want to read list from various reviews I've heard throughout the year. And then I just added, I'm starting to worry about this Black Box of Doom to the list when I saw it on this Goodreads list, because I thought it just kind of sounded fun. None of the rest of them really intrigued me that much. So the plan is, I'm gonna go on Libby. I'm going to try and reserve all 5 of these books, and we'll just see how it goes. I imagine, once the Goodreads Choice Awards drop, it's probably very hard to get a hold of these books. So we'll see what they have to say. Okay, I'm back from trying to put in these holds on Libby, and here's the deal. I was immediately able to grab Annie Bot and the Stardust Grail. So those 2 books are for sure going to be in this vlog. There was a 3-week wait on The Ministry of Time. So if you've used Libby before, their estimated waits can sometimes be shorter than what they say. They're almost never longer, but they are often shorter. So I'm really crossing my fingers that I'll get to read a 3rd book for this vlog. However, I'm starting to worry about this Black Box of Doom and Beautyland. All had like 10-week waits on them. So highly unlikely that I will be reading those books for this vlog. So the plan is I'm gonna read Annie Bot, the Stardust Grail, and The Ministry of Time, hopefully, for this vlog, and then I will come back, share my thoughts about them, compare them with my vote that I've already put in for The Mercy of Gods, and then we'll see. I probably won't finish this vlog before the 2nd round happens. So let me look at the timeline here that it says on Goodreads. Right, so the opening round is November 12th through 24th. So if I can read all 3 of those books before the 24th, then potentially you'll see this video earlier. But assuming I don't, then I'll definitely have this video up probably before the winners are announced on December 5th. And so then we can look at the final round together. November 26th through December 1st is when the final round will be posted. We can look at which books made it to the final round and if any of the ones that I read and enjoyed made it. That's the plan for the video. So let me know down in the comments below which books on the sci-fi list that you've read, which ones you're voting for, and if you haven't read any of the books in the sci-fi category this year, let me know what your top pick is for the Goodreads Choice Awards overall this year. Let's read. Good morning. It is the next day, which makes it November 14th. I binged Annie Bot yesterday. I have, as of right now, my Kindle's telling me I only have a half an hour left in the book. So I read it for like several consecutive hours last night, and I just didn't want to put it down. I literally only put it down because I was falling asleep while I was reading it, and it was already well past my bedtime. So I have my little Powell's Books coffee mug from Portland. with a cute little book dragon on it. Anyway, I've got about an hour before I need to log in for work, and I have half an hour left of Antibot, so after I get done filming this, I'm just gonna sit here and read it. It's been so good, but in a how do I describe it? Antibot is a sex bot, and she is owned by a man, and she is a learning robot so that she can learn his needs and his desires better. And of course, this leads to it's really there's a lot of questions about autonomy and what it means to be human and abusive relationships and women's rights and all of these things, all of these buzzwords that really I enjoy thinking about are kind of wrapped up in this story. And I just feel so much for Annie. She feels very much like a real person. Of course, she's the narrator of the story. So it's really tragic and sad and really gives a lot of insight into what emotionally abusive relationships are like. And I just think this was a really unique lens from which to tell that story. So yeah, I'm gonna finish this up and I'll tune back in just a minute and let you know how it went. Okay, I just finished Antibot and it was so good. I really just felt for Annie, and I'm so glad that the author chose to give her a satisfying ending. I was really worried the entire time. It was really cool to see Annie start out as just a basic bot and then get smarter and smarter and more human as the story progressed, and to really start questioning her agency and her desires that are separate from her owners. Doug is her owner, and he's a very, in many ways, a typical guy, but there's a scariness to how a typical man treats women, and also what changes in that dynamic when the man actually owns the woman and when she has no life outside of him. Yeah, I just loved all of the conversations that this kind of sparked in my head, and I just thought it was really, really well done. I can't imagine a way that this story could have been better told. So this is definitely a 5-star read for me, and really thought-provoking. Also uncomfortable and unsettling and sad in so many ways, but with a note of hope at the end. So really loved it. Now I've got to log in for work, and then it'll be on to the Stardust Grail. Hey, so I am about 60-something% of the way through the Stardust Grail, and I haven't updated you guys in a few days because we've been busy digging a French drain for our new house, and that has been a lot of work. And also we started rewatching The Expanse, which has been super fun. It's one of my favorite sci-fi shows of all time. Absolutely love that show. I love the book series, but I will say I have to watch the show with captions on. It's one of those. But anyway, yeah, 60% of the way through The Stardust Grail by Yume Kitase. And I just don't have that much to say about it, I guess, which is why I haven't updated you guys so far. The blurb on the front by Veronica Roth says something about Indiana Jones set in space. And I'm really not getting that vibe. It is pretty typical tropes. The main character is an alien artifacts thief who has given up that life to go get her doctorate degree in archaeology or something like that, but gets pulled back in for one last job, et cetera, that will change the fate of worlds and save this alien species and all of that kind of stuff. And her best friend is a member of that alien species. It all sounds like stuff that I would really like, but it just doesn't feel unique, I guess. I don't know. I just feel like I've read this story before, and this one isn't doing anything particularly like outstanding to me. I feel like if I was new to the sci-fi genre, that maybe I would be having a better time, but this just kind of feels a bit fluffy. Maybe I was just expecting more substance. The description on Goodreads called it a anti-colonialism, blah, blah, blah. Like there is a little bit of that, but it's not doing any sort of deep dive on that topic so far. It's just kind of there. So yeah, it's fine. I'm just not feeling it right now, I guess. I would probably DNF it if it wasn't for this vlog right now. But it's not bad. It's fun and it's fine and all of that. I'm just not particularly having a fun time. Other updates about the Goodreads Choice Awards. I heard an interview on NPR when I was on my way to Lowe's with the author of Orbital, which was one of the books on the Sci-Fi Goodreads Choice Awards that I had kind of passed over and not really paid any attention to. I did hear that it had won the Booker Prize, but I don't really pay that much attention to the Booker Prize, so that didn't necessarily bump it up my radar anymore. But this NPR interview that I heard with the author, I thought sounded extra fascinating. And the author was basically talking about how it's basically like a nature book, but from a space perspective. And it is a modern era book. It's not like set in the future, but it's from the perspective of these astronauts on the space station, I think. And so to me, I don't even really think that sounds like a sci-fi book. There's no like futuristic aspects. It is completely like modern age with the abilities that our current society can do. And there's no like crazy alien element or anything like that to it. So to me, that's, I don't really even know why that would be considered sci-fi, just because it's set in space. But regardless, it did sound pretty interesting. It definitely sounded like a vibes, no plot type of thing, which is not usually my thing, but just the way it was described and the author talked about it as like kind of nature writing. I do really enjoy nature writing. So I did put that one on my radar and on my want to read list on Goodreads, and then I went on Libby and tried to reserve it, and it had a crazy, ridiculous wait time, like 15 weeks or more. So I definitely won't be reading it for this vlog if I do get around to it. But anyway, yeah, so that's where I'm at right now, and I will update you guys again after I finish the Stardust Grail. Hello, it is evening, the same day that I recorded earlier, and I have no new thoughts about the Stardust Grail. I will expound a little bit though on why this book didn't really work for me. And I think it boils down to the fact that everything was just too easy. It felt a little bit like a YA book in that way, and where they would search for things and they were really easy to find. Or like injuries didn't really matter. Like the main character gets shot at one point and then it's just like, look, it's all healed, and it's like pretty much never mentioned again. And the main character just like figures things out really easily. And even though her best friend, who's like her traveling partner, is a member of a much more advanced alien species, that character is never the one who figures things out. It's always the main character. And whenever she does figure things out, her super advanced alien friend is always just like, wow, you're so smart. There was also like this really big space battle, supposedly, but it took up very little time in the book, and it was just not engaging. I've never read such a boring space battle. But their ship got like really damaged, and then it was just like, boop, 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 we fixed it all, and it's fine now, and I don't know. Yeah, it felt very basic. It felt like a first draft of what a story should be for an adult science fiction audience. So I still stick by what I said earlier, that I think this would be a fun read for maybe someone who was like brand new to the genre, but it just doesn't work for tried and true sci-fi reader unless perhaps you're just looking for a palate cleanse type of read, because there really wasn't a whole lot of substance to it. So that was a big disappointment. I was really hoping for big things from this author, because their other book also made the Goodreads Choice Awards last year, which was their debut novel, but that was like kind of a murder mystery set in space. And as I've said in many previous videos, I'm not a big mystery fan, so that book just never appealed to me. But this one was more like Indiana Jones adventure heist in space. And I was like, oh, that sounds definitely like my style. And it was not. So I doubt I will try another book by this author anytime soon, unfortunately. But hopefully it's finding its audience. I think the fact that it made the Goodreads Choice Awards just goes to show how off base the Goodreads Choice Awards sci-fi category is for tried and true sci-fi readers. So, sorry, that's my spicy take of the day. I just checked Libby, and I still think Ministry of Time is my next upcoming book from the Goodreads sci-fi category, which has only a 3-week wait at this point. So I'm taking a break until my next Libby book comes in, and I'll be reading other books in the meantime that won't be in this vlog. And then I will come back and talk to you guys again once my next awards book is available. So we'll chat then, and hope you're having good reading in the meantime. My Ministry of Time hold came in actually only like a day or two after the last clip that I showed you guys. But by that point, I was already like 20% of the way into my next read, which was not for this vlog. So it's been probably like 5 or 6 days since I recorded. But here we are. Last night when I started the Ministry of Time, I got about 17% of the way into the book. It's really charming so far. So basically the premise is it kicks off, this woman is interviewing for a job, and it's like her 6th interview, and she's had to go through this like really rigorous interview process. She's not really sure what job she's interviewing for because it's top secret classified stuff, but she knows it's a government job, and she thinks based on her skills and her past government experience and like languages that it has something to do with refugee resettlement or something like that. Then of course she gets the job and finds out it's for the Ministry of Time. And so it's the British government, and they have this new time agency, and it says right off at the beginning of the book that like, don't worry about the like, we're not going to discuss like how time travel actually happens. It's not relevant, but just know that the British government has time travel now and they're testing it out. And so basically they hired like 6 people like her, the main character, and they are pulling 6 people out of the past and bringing them to the present as like their kind of guinea pigs to see what happens to people who time travel. And so they're not sending any of their people to the past. They're not sending any of their people to the future. They're literally just pulling people out of the past as like their canary in the coal mine of like what will happen to our people. They have to see if it works or like if anything really bad happens. And so her job is she is basically assigned to, they're calling them like expatriates of history or like time refugees, but they're pulling people from history who died. So they're not really changing anything about the historical past because those people died. Bringing them to the future hopefully shouldn't change anything is the theory. And so the person that she is assigned to was a man who was on an expedition in the Arctic trying to like discover the North Passage or whatever, and the entire expedition died. And so they pull him from that, and you know, he's plopped down into the year 2024. So he is grappling with, the camera just fell over for no reason. Okay. So he is pulled to the future, to the present, and he is grappling with the trauma of learning that his entire expedition of like 136 men perished, that their mission was unsuccessful, and then dealing with modern life. And she is basically assigned to him as like his housemate to help him adjust. And they're supposed to live together for a year while she integrates him to modern society and modern life and make sure that like he doesn't spontaneously combust or turn to jelly or like go crazy and go on a murdering rampage or, you know, any, like they don't know what to expect because no one's ever time traveled before. And so she's basically just like his babysitter, his psychologist, his friend, to help him adjust to modern life. He's taking it really well, better than it sounds like the other 5 people that were pulled to the present day from the past, who all have their own like people like her who are helping them adjust. But he's still obviously like very shell-shocked by the experience and is still learning. And they're trying to not overwhelm him with too much information at once. And so, you know, like, this is how a toilet works. And this is the concept of electricity. And there are airplanes in the sky and things like that. And like just trying to take it like one day at a time sort of thing. The main character, the woman, is Cambodian. Her mother was a Cambodian refugee. So she is mixed race, but she said she passes for white. So there's conversations happening with this man from, I think he's from like the 1840s, maybe. I can't remember the exact, but it's like the 1800s at some point. And so he's at first like very shocked to be like living with a woman, how inappropriate that is. But she's like letting him know all of these things. But then also like there's some conversations starting to come up about race and the treatment of peoples back in the day and, you know, the differences in modern day life and things that he's trying to adjust to. So that's all really interesting so far. And the man, why am I not remembering any characters' names so far? I just read it all last night. But yeah, he's taking it all in stride so far. He hasn't had any major psychotic breaks, but it is obviously a lot for him to take in. And he's really charming and funny, and he's like trying to crack jokes with her about the situation when he's not feeling completely overwhelmed. And that's been really cute so far. So yeah, I'm having a good time. This is the book I was most nervous about tackling because it has a really, like, for the Goodreads Choice Awards, I think it's like the lowest rated book in the sci-fi category, but it also has the most ratings. So way more people have read this book this year, but way less people have liked it. I've just heard a lot of really mixed reviews about whether this book is hitting or not for people, and a lot of people that really haven't liked it very much. So I'm curious to see what my thoughts are going to be as the book progresses, because so far I think it's really fun, but maybe I don't actually know anything about where this book is going. So we'll find out together. And I'll let you know once I've read some more.
Here's the deal. It is November 26th, which means it is the first round. No, it is the first day of the final round of the Goodreads Choice Awards, aka the short list. So I believe this is up for about a week for final voting, and then we get the final results on like December 5th. We had like 2 weeks of voting for the long list, which was the 20 books in each category. A week for the short list, which is the top 10. They got the most votes in the first round. The results have dropped. Let's check out what's in our sci-fi short list this year. So here we are. It's the reader's favorite science fiction, according to Goodreads. According to the actual votes, because readers don't get to choose what the top 20 are. Behind the scenes, Goodreads makes the top 20 based on it has to be above a 3.5 average rating. And I don't really know what the other criteria are, but it has something to do with the number of people who have marked it as one to read or read or something like that on Goodreads. But the top 10 is chosen from those by the readers themselves, by the people who vote. And we have the Stardust Grail is on there, which I am not surprised, but I just, the more that I have thought about this book, the less I like it. And it's just funny because I was explaining the plot to my husband, and I was like explaining why I didn't like it. And I was getting like really just like ramped up about it, and I got like pretty animated, and I was like, wow, I need to go back and re-record that clip so that people can see like how ramped up I am about it. But then I was like, I had already edited it and everything, and I was like, it's fine. But yeah, I like it less and less the more I think about it. So I've actually downgraded it to a 2.5 rating. It is what it is. And then we have I Cheerfully Refuse, which again was one of them that I've never heard of. I think it's about a climate change. The Ministry of Time is on here, which I haven't read like anything else in the book since I last updated you on that. The Other Valley, which is one that I have never heard of and I don't know what it is about. Orbital, the winner of the Booker Prize, is on here. The Family Experiment by John Mars, which I think he's a pretty popular like thriller writer. So this is obviously a sci-fi thriller. Makes sense. Douglas Preston's Extinction, I've heard, is kind of a Jurassic Park adjacent type of thing where like it has something to do with bringing extinct animals back to life. And that does sound pretty fun, actually. Anibot is on here, which is exciting. The Mercy of Gods, of course. I'm very happy that's on here. And then Moon of the Turning Leaves. So what were the ones that were on my TBR that didn't make the list? Well, actually, I think Beautyland is the only one. Oh, and the Black Box of Doom. I'm not surprised to not see either of those on here. Like I said, Beautyland was one I had only added to my TBR because the New York Times mentioned it in several different articles that I had read throughout the year. And the Black Box of Doom I had literally never heard of. I just thought the title sounded really funny. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I went from only having read one book in the top 20 to having now read 4 books in the top 10. So successful vlog, right? Even though I haven't finished Minister of Time yet, but I'll definitely finish it before the final voting is complete. Snubs. I'm really surprised not to see the 4th book of the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer on the top 10. I'm not sure when that came out, but I feel like it came out pretty recently. So I think that would be my only like inkling as to why that wouldn't be on here, because he's a super popular author and that I think is a pretty popular series. So maybe it just hasn't had enough time for its readers to have read it. The books had to be published this year. So if it was published just within the last couple of months, then there's a good chance not a lot of readers have had a chance to read it yet. So I'm not going to discuss final voting because I haven't finished the Ministry of Time yet, but I just wanted to go ahead and give you my quick take on what our top 10 are looking like this year. But wow, I don't really feel like this list is indicative of what sci-fi readers are reading this year. It is what it is. All right, I'll check in later.
Every change has a reason. Baby, let it come to you. Every soul, every season lives outside of status quo. If we stop believing we're meant to be, expanding our abilities. If the passion's gone, we are doing it.
Be nice if I had my microphone on, wouldn't it? I didn't in the last clip, and I feel like you can tell. All right, so here we are. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. It is Thanksgiving Day, and last night, very late, I finished the Ministry of Time. It did go downhill. I will say from about 25% of the way in through at least the 50% mark, I was bored. It was very samey, and I just felt like at that point in the story I was just waiting for something to happen. There's only so much of like historical figure. Oh my gosh, my camera is perched up on my cat tree right now, and my cat just came and started scratching on it, so the camera is wobbling. That's why. Hi baby. Meow. Anywho, yeah, there's only so much of like introducing historical person to modern day things that you can do before it starts to get pretty old. It is a fun thought experiment, and I thought the first 20% of the book being that was worth it and fun. But then instead of, can you not mess with the cat tree right now? I know, it's your cat tree. But it was more of that, and then it was more of them getting to know the other people who had been pulled in from the past. And so there was like a really random amount of like dinner parties and them like cooking food and just like hanging out. And I was like, okay, slice of life is just not what I wanted from this story. And then the entire time, of course, the main character is developing feelings for this man that she, oh my God, is assigned to. This was a bad decision, I'm sorry. And so that's obviously like very ethically not cool. There's this huge power dynamic between them where she can track literally all of his movements because he's been like microchipped, and she has access to like his computer and his phone and all these technology things that he has access to, but she can literally track his every movement, see his every digital thought and footprint. And so it is like supremely unethical for her to be catching feelings for him, or not to catch feelings because you can't help that, but to act on those feelings. And then of course that's where the story goes, right? They fall for each other, they become romantically entangled. And the book just never really, other than like her initial hesitation to get into that relationship, I don't feel like it appropriately examines how unethical that actually is. You know, there is some drama later on involved with that where like he gets really mad at her when he realizes kind of the extent of how much power she was holding over him, but it's still, I don't feel like was done appropriately. Also, I would say the last 20% of the book got a lot more interesting in terms of plot, with like kind of some spy thriller type things happening where there were people from other timelines that were coming back to their own time to try and mess with the time travel that they were doing and to like steal the time device basically. And I wish that had been strung throughout the book more, because that was all interesting, but I felt like it was crammed into the last part too much. I just feel like the 25 to 50% mark, like that quarter of the book was so boring, and then the last 20% of the book was pretty exciting, and I just feel like that made the whole thing just feel a little bit off. So I still think it was good and it was worth the read. Some of the prose was absolutely beautiful. There were lines that just like really stuck with me, where she walked into a room and she said, "He fills the room like a horizon." And I was just like, oh, I don't know. That one just like, there were multiple like prose things about the book that I really liked. So I would consider reading another Kayleigh Bradley book in the future, but it was just okay. I don't think this book is gonna stick with me for a long time to come or anything, but it was good. So I think I saw that The Ministry of Time, this was her debut novel. And so I think for a debut novel, that's great. I did vote for her in the debut novel category. I voted for The Ministry of Time. However, I definitely do not think this is the best book in the sci-fi category this year. I will be casting my vote for The Mercy of Gods. So sorry you didn't get to see my reaction to that book in this vlog, but I will link the video where I did review The Mercy of Gods down below. It's one of my favorite books of the year. However, Amy Bott was definitely the best book of this video. So if I was to rank them from this video, it would definitely be Amy Bott at the top. Loved it. Ministry of Time, good, but not great. And then the Stardust Grail, very, very mediocre attempt at a sci-fi novel, in my opinion. Sorry, like I said, the longer that I think about that book, the less that I like it. So that's how the voting's gonna go down for me. However, I want to talk a little bit about my predictions of how I think the actual voting is gonna go, because I looked this morning, and like I said, it's Thanksgiving, so things could definitely change over like the last few days that the voting is open. But The Ministry of Time is by far the most read book in the sci-fi shortlist this year. It has 73,000 ratings, even though it's fairly lowly rated for what I would think of for something to be in the Goodreads Choice Awards. It only has a 3.61 average rating. It's just like double what the next most popular book in this category is in terms of number of readers in 2024. So I think that The Ministry of Time is really likely to win this category, even though less people have liked this book, just way more people have read it, and it's obviously the Goodreads Choice Awards is a popularity contest. The second most read book in this category is Amy Bott, again by a pretty large margin, 34,972 ratings as of a few minutes ago when I was checking the numbers. So that's a huge, huge difference between, you know, the most popular and the second most popular. Amy Bott has a 3.83 average rating, and then number 3 most popular, most read, I should say, book in this category this year is The Family Experiment by John Mars, which has 18,000, which again is like, it's almost halved again from Amy Bott, 18,376 ratings, but it has an average rating of 4.11, so it's obviously more well liked so far by its readers. And then number 4 is my personal vote, The Mercy of God, which has 14,974 ratings, but an average rating of 4.2. The Mercy of Gods has the best average rating of all of the 10 books on the shortlist this year, but it is only the 4th most read. And once you get into the 10 to 15,000 ratings range, like most of the other books in that category kind of fall into that level of popularity, which really is not, it's not very popular. So I think it's just interesting because if you go look at like the mystery thriller category or the romance category, for instance, there's like multiple books in those categories that have well over 100,000 readers this year. And so the fact that so many of the top 10 in sci-fi have like 10,000 ratings, I think just goes to show how weak this category is. Or maybe, I don't want to say that sci-fi is unpopular, but it definitely, like, I have a hard time finding sci-fi booktubers. So maybe sci-fi is just less popular, or maybe it's just that like publishing is not publishing the sci-fi that sci-fi readers want to read a lot right now, which is definitely sad. But anywho, so I guess my prediction is that The Ministry of Time will win this category just because it has so many readers. I don't think it deserves it. And not that I don't think it deserves that many readers. It definitely does. It's a good book, like I said. But it's definitely, I don't think it is the best book in this category by far. I thought both The Mercy of Gods and Annie Bot were better than that. Who knows? Maybe some of these other books that I haven't read are also better than The Ministry of Time, but I haven't read them, so I can't comment. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite book from the sci-fi category was this year, or any snubs that you think should have been in the sci-fi category that weren't this year. If you don't have any thoughts about the sci-fi category in general for 2024, just let me know what one of your favorite sci-fi books is that you've read this year, regardless of whether it was a 2024 release. Thanks so much for hanging out. Please be kind, read more books, and hit the subscribe button down below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you next time.